and girl. Your attention, please.
Hello and welcome back inside the park for me for podcast number 934. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
A.K.A. Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do. You know, I'm harmless, you know? So tonight, for your kind consideration, we're going to be covering Formula One news, of course. Now, I got to say, normally I would introduce my co-host, Grace, but as some of you may know, Grace went to the MotoGP race in Spain, and while she's still there, and so she apparently, somebody hit the light switch in Spain and turned the lights off over there, and she couldn't get out, right? Yeah, she's stuck. So you know, where there's gaps, folks, I fill in gaps. And I know this is tinfoil hat. I think it's a grand conspiracy. I think Spain fell in love with Grace. I think they want to keep her, so they're preventing her from going home. But that's just what I'm telling my friends. However, in lieu of that, I'm sure she gets to stay extra night, and I'm sure Carlos Sainz will have her up to the house for some small plate tapas and stuff like that, I'm sure.
And his cousin.
And his cousin, yeah, and his manager, his cousin manager. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, I can't remember the name. Delightful guy, I'm sure. But anyway, in lieu of Grace being here, of course, I have to introduce my other co-host. You know who it is. If the song will play, I don't know. There we go. That's it.
Rick from Out of the Wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy. It's...
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
It's Paul, the International.
Yeah.
Paul,
Hello.
I got to say right off top, if any of you didn't jump on the YouTube channel and watch the SRO races and the GT, congratulations to you, the Hannahs.
Yeah.
Both Hannahs for Heart of Racing, third place on the podium.
Yeah, they did. It was the longest race of the year for the GT4 series.
The 3-hour race, was it?
3 hour of Kota.
Yeah.
So, which was fun, and yeah, they kicked butt. They were awesome.
Yeah.
And there was a 15 minutes before the end. There's a yellow, and then just Hannah Grisham just friggin' get out of my way. It was awesome.
That was great.
Fought away to the podium. It was.
Yeah.
I mean, they both did an exceptional job, and we were very, very happy, and they were very happy, and they had a big crowd shouting their names, so that was pretty fun.
That's great.
On the podium.
They're
becoming a little popular.
Yeah, that's great. The Hannahs, that's awesome. I love their. You posted a video of their podium. You know, their sprayed champagne. It was great to see them up there on the podium.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it was great. And then you had the GT with Gray and was it Dan?
And Darren.
Darren,
Turner.
I mean. And where'd you guys? You were seventh.
Yeah, well, we came fourth. There's two races for the GT3s,
Yep.
and so they came fourth in race 1 and seventh in race
two.
2, which is a shame because Gray got held up by a McLaren, and for a number of laps, once he got by him, he was flying, but it was too late by that point.
Yeah.
So only got up to 7th, made a move for 6th on the last lap, but they did a good job.
Yeah.
Gray's really taking to the GT3 stuff, so he did
great.
a great job.
Yeah, good on you, Gray.
Who wouldn't want to drive with Darren Turner? You know,
Sign me up.
Le Mans winner, Daytona winner. I mean,
Sign
he's
me
a
up.
Great mentor for Gray. So they're getting along great, and the team, it's fun times.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Where do you guys go next?
we go to with IMSA. Our next race is in Laguna. Then the week after that, back for SRO at Sebring.
Cool.
So
how long is the Sebring race for SRO?
That's just normal. So we'll do the 2 sprint races or hour races for the GT for the Hannahs, and an hour and a half for the GT3 with Gray and Darren. But yeah, next week is after this weekend, the week after Laguna in IMSA, but that's the first time we're actually running the IMSA and the WEC team at the same time.
Ooh.
So, usually there's a bit of back and forth with personnel, but this is the first time we're kind of split. So
you have the GT3
run on our own.
Yeah, so you're going to have the GT3s in Laguna for the IMSA, right? And then you're going to have...
No, GT3 and Valkyrie.
Oh, you're going to have GT3 and Valkyrie, both.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in WEC, we've got 2 Valkyries and 1 GT3. So, as I said, It's going to be an interesting weekend. It's good fun.
It's going to
right?
be interesting.
The responsibility, we can't rely on the mountings of engineers at this point because they've got to be in other places. Yeah, I'd say take the training wheels off for us with the Valkyrie.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. That's awesome. Well, make sure you folks watch that. That's good racing.
Yeah.
And if you guys aren't watching IMSA and Heart of Racing, great series, and obviously WEC and Le Mans, it's all a great series. And to watch the Valkyries and the GT3s, I love the sound of both of them. They sound fabulous. Both of them do. And I'm kind of a fan of that GT3. All right, well, let's talk about some, and this does tie in, I promise. We're going to pick Paul's brain while he's here. The first thing I wanted to talk about is we talked about Oscar's win in Saudi Arabia. He took the championship lead, his third win on the season. Jeddah looked great, didn't put a foot wrong. Just a fantastic performance from Oscar. I think he did a great job. But that consistent performance really does put pressure, and we talked about it, puts a little pressure on McLaren's leadership on who they back for the title and when, or if they do. We've spoken before, Paul, a little bit about it, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so if I'm trying to paraphrase, but correct me where I have this wrong. But you had kind of said, look, right now, they do have two, very talented drivers. But right now that team's got to focus on the constructors. That's where all the money is. You felt like maybe once that team gets a little more comfortable with where they are in the constructors, then they could, let the two drivers kind of go hammer and tongs a little bit once you've got that comfort level. But it's really ultimately from the team's perspective, it's all down to the constructors.
Yeah, I mean, from the team's perspective, it is.
Yeah.
And they're managing, they've been managing this driver pairing a little bit. The last thing they want is Oscar going somewhere else.
Yeah.
Obviously, Lando's a bit more embedded in the team, but now Oscar's been there enough. They know what they got, and they definitely don't want to let him go. So they've been managing this as we saw it last year, and a little controversially sometimes on how they manipulated or ran the strategies in the race. On the driver's side, I think it's very different.
Yeah.
On the driver's side, yes, they're trying to stay within those boundaries, but when they can just be on their own, qualifying, for instance, start of the race, etc., the drivers know exactly what they want to do. I mean, either one of them want to put a big enough gap between them where the team doesn't have to start weighing up options once they get further down the road and the manufacturer's championship is a lot more solidified. It's not like, oh, we're all going to be great. Yeah, I'm not worried about the championship till we get this constructors championship. Then we'll talk about it after the break. But the drivers in their head know exactly what they want to do, and they have to do it and push super hard to push themselves away from the other one.
Yeah.
And so in a team stuff, it's hard to know what's going to happen there. Hopefully. It could be very interesting if they start banging wheels at this point. But I think the qualifying is super, super important. And the first 3 laps of race for both drivers.
I was just going to say that, not to marginalize the race, but I think from McLaren's perspective, watch very closely on Saturdays for the qualifying.
Yeah.
I think that's the driver versus driver race, to see who can get ahead. There's a lot of factors on who do you manage and how do you manage it and do you favor. There's a lot of factors involved in this, such as, some of them may have contract stipulations, if any.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a possibility. The driver performance consistencies, who's most consistent, who has less unforced errors, right? That's always plays into the equation. Any future aspirations the team have, which horse do they bet on for the long term? Is it Lando for the long term, or do they really feel like they've got a tiger by the tail on Oscar, and he's kind of the long term? Now, no one would ever admit any of that, but deep down, I know Zach's got to be asking that question. Then you've got all the fans, their allegiances, their commentary on social media, negative responses from fans. You also have sponsors, not only team sponsors, but individual driver sponsors that you have to take in. There's a lot involved in about how you do this and how you manage that. And that's why it can be touchy, I think. But I wanted to draw the parallel a little bit, Paul, because having been around your operation and been with you and watched the driver meetings and those kind of things, in IMSA, so in Paul's world, and here, correct me where I'm wrong because I'm trying to explain your world and you're sitting here listening to it. But in Paul's world, depending on the race and the length of the race, you're either 2 drivers or 3 drivers per car. And while that isn't necessarily a Lando v. Oscar head-to-head, who do we back? Because those 3 drivers in a car are a team, and it's about getting that car to the finish and on top of the podium on the top step. And that's ultimately the goal. But I have to think, Paul, that it doesn't mean that there is a lack of driver drama, may be too strong of a word, but there's driver issues that can crop up. You've got certainly in Pro-Am, there's a big disparity in skill level in Pro-Am.
Right.
So we'll discount that for a minute. Let's just talk about Pro. Come Le Mans in a Valkyrie, or come Laguna in a Valkyrie, right? So you've got pros in there, and let's say you've got 3 drivers. The intent is, deep down inside, drivers are drivers, and they're going to want to be the fastest of the 3. All 3 of them are. And they're going to be the fastest guy in the car, right? And I have to think, in the history of IMSA, that there are times when certain drivers may be grumbling a little bit about their teammate because they felt like maybe they left too much on the table. Maybe they weren't fast enough. Maybe we didn't do enough. So talk to us a little bit about what that driver dynamic when you're dealing, because like you said, you're fielding all these cars that got 2 drivers each. You're fielding, I mean, you could fill up a party bus of drivers each weekend that you guys, it's not just 2, right? How do you manage that? Does that happen in IMSA that much?
I mean, it definitely happens in IMSA. We try to keep it away from our team. But it's always a work in progress because you've got to keep everyone focused on the greater good, which is winning races, winning championships. And every single week we put it into everybody. Leave your egos at the door. You are our chosen drivers. We believe in you, and we'll do everything we can to support you. And so whatever we need to do, we're not judging you by your lap, by this. We know that there's some sacrifices some drivers have to do for the greater good, whether it's a stint on second tires, whether it's this or or that, or giving up, having a pit suit, like let's just say Long Beach, for instance. Okay, you only get 10 minutes in the car, but the strategy was you got to get out the car. Okay, you barely did anything. It kind of happened at Detroit too, but you've got to seat the trust in the team that we're not sitting there literally going through the data every week, judging and stipulating, because then then they're on their back heels, and then they are looking across the room a lot more at their teammate rather than working together. We're a bit of a unique team there, I feel, in that we keep drivers for a very long time. It has to be a really good reason for something for you not to be here, because we do a lot of research on the drivers and also bring them in. And, if they're not working well with the team or have that same ideology, then they're not there very long. Mm-hmm. No matter what their performance is, honestly, because we know, everyone has to come together to be successful. That's not necessarily true on other teams. And we know there's a lot of analyzing, especially with manufacturer drivers. If you're a Porsche driver, you'd better protect yourself every single minute of the day. Maybe it's BMW. If you're a manufacturer driver, you are being judged every week, and you're being, and you may go up and down. You may lose your ride halfway through the turn, and it's very, very much like Helmut Marko's at the helm, ready to axe somebody. And there's something called a B pillar rating for drivers, that they drivers are measured by their average, like a 10-lap average in a race. And these stats go out, and some drivers focus very much on that because they know they're being judged on that by their team or their manufacturer that they're driving for. And sometimes they'll sacrifice the greater good of the race to make sure that they're held in this higher light on this B pillar. So that's why, and we don't look at that stuff. but it's a team ideology that's first, that you can either make a driver comfortable, that they don't think they're, going to lose their job at any moment if they're not performing at the highest height. But as I said, a lot of teams don't work that way.
Yeah.
And if you just got to nip it in the bud as soon as you can. And I'd say always, every time, every week, no matter how many times we've said it, we bring that whole team purpose together, which is easier to do than a Formula One team with individual drivers and individual cars, with individual engineers, individual mechanics. That's a lot harder to manage, to bring people together, than it is for a team where everyone's kind of working for the same goal and will end up with the same result at the end of the deal. Even if you've only done 10 minutes in the car, you're still standing on the podium. You still got that success.
Yeah. Well, I was curious because when I was with you at Indy, just watching, I was a fly on the wall, folks, and everybody in Paul's team was looking at me funny. Like, what the hell is this guy? It's like that movie.
Why is he always wearing a polo shirt?
Right. It was like that movie Moneyball, when they're trying to figure out what they're going to do to replace Giambi, and the guy says, "Who's that?" And he says, "That's Pete." He goes, "Does Pete need to be here?" And he was like, "Yes, he does." That's exactly what happened. I was there, and they're all like, "Who's that?" And Paul's like, "That's Todd." "Does Todd need to be here?" "Yes, he does." Yeah. So it was nice. But that interaction between the drivers and stuff, you're with them all the time. You see all the personalities and everything. I wasn't there long enough to gauge any of that. But what I did see is three drivers working well with the team from a strategy standpoint, but also the engineers in the car, and then what they were experiencing in the car, how we could try to solve it. What I saw is three drivers sort of, at the end of the day, very much like you said, we're focused on delivering the best result we can for the team. All three of us are in this, or two of us in the car, and our goal is to win, right? And so it's more of that team thing. Whereas, as you pointed out, rightfully so, in Formula One, of course, Oscar and Lando or Charles and Lewis, will say, and I think they believe, they want the best for the team, of course. But at the end of the day, that Formula One career can be very short-lived unless you're Fernando Alonso. So in that case, it is about the championship for them.
Yeah, and I would say this from my standpoint, when I was racing, I always wanted to be the fastest guy.
Yeah.
And there's certain things you need through a weekend to help you be the fastest you can be. And some teams maybe didn't give you that.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to try and fight for those things.
Yep.
And sometimes you didn't get them, and that be pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
And it can affect your mentality, and that's something that, whether it's done consciously or subconsciously, I think some of it was done consciously, but I'm not bitter. But it's, but that's what the team has to do, is to make sure those questions don't come up in their driver's mind. Oscar's in the debrief for a little longer after why was that going on?
Well, and we've seen
that.
So-and-so got the new wing and I didn't.
Right.
And
these all have to be laid out way ahead of time of why that's going on. Else those little niggling doubts on, are they supporting me or him, or is he getting more than me? That's very difficult for a team to manage.
Yeah.
But it's something they have to manage and be very cognizant of the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. That's why I wanted to talk about it. I know we talked about Oscar, potentially knocking Lando's feet off the desk, but I wanted to talk because I was watching you guys over the weekend in the race, and I was thinking, gosh, think about it. Andrea Stell's got to deal with two incredibly talented race car drivers, and egos involved, contracts, all of it, right? In a year that's probably their best chance to win it. On the flip side, I was watching you and I'm thinking, gosh, from Ian and your standpoint, think of how many drivers you guys have to manage. All the driver egos, not that they're egotistic prima donnas, but they all believe they're really fast, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And they wouldn't be winners if they hadn't had that mentality.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure. And they always do push for it in a way.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it has to be kind of pulled back a little bit sometimes.
Well, I thought it would be interesting to chat about.
Yeah.
Speaking of drivers, so there was some hubbub going around the socials this past week about Max Verstappen and
the socials.
Yeah, the socials. On the gram, Paul. And it was about Max Verstappen and speculation about Red Bull, his Red Bull future. And of course, that's going to crop up if he's not dominating this year. And that's a natural, it's human nature. You start, having a chin wag about that on social. But anyway, speculation has grown about Verstappen's potential. Now, I was reading on socials, well, he may contractually, he could switch mid-season. I don't see that happening. I'd be stunned if he switched mid-season. Absolutely stunned. I don't think that'll happen. But I do think there probably is stipulations and exit clauses in the contract. And what I was reading is that some of those clauses could be that he's allowed departure from the contract if he's ranked lower than third in the Drivers' Championship at a specific point in the season. Now, I don't know if that's completely fabricated or if that's real. I have no way of knowing, but that's what people are talking about. He currently sits third in the championship. So, ultimately, why does that matter? It would matter, even like I said, I don't think it'll happen mid-season, but if it ended up at the end of the season, it still matters. It's still huge. A departure of the reigning champ could dramatically alter the competitive landscape of F1 in general. And while I can't imagine it mid-season, it does leave Red Bull, even at the end of the season, a serious situation ahead of big regulation changes for 2026. The struggle, and the reason I say that, Paul, the struggle to find a teammate for Max that can handle the car that's so loose. If they lost Max, what do they have? They'd have to have two drivers that can handle that car, which right now they can't find one, right?
Yeah.
And I think that would be, before we segue into guessing and speculation, I think this would be a huge loss for Red Bull.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. That was probably the understatement of the podcast.
Understatement of the year.
Yeah.
Massive. It would be massive, and it would have to change their whole ideology on how they design the car, which is a little unfortunate.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Cars kind of getting on the way, right?
Yep.
I mean, no one drives like
Max. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask you. If they lost him at the end of this year's car is being developed, you pointed out, I was just going to ask you, I mean, if the car is almost undrivable by Yuki, Liam, and a host of other characters, then you got to change it quickly, I would think,
Right. And as we know, that may the key to maybe that car still being pretty competitive, because Max has done some great things already, is his ability to drive it like that.
Yeah, right.
But you bring it down to a more sedate setup, more traditional, maybe that the glean is off and the Red Bull starts falling down the pack.
Yeah.
No matter who that driver is, because the car, their ideology has been Max Verstappen on the nose for so long. It'd be really hard to retract from that direction.
Right.
I mean, apart from, you can argue if Max is the best driver, I would say he is. Certainly right now, he's the best driver. Any team should try and find a way of getting him on the team. How that would happen, I do not know.
I don't know.
I don't think McLaren would even take him.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so,
No.
but I'm not sure, and I don't know how Ferrari would deal that. But any team should be just chomping at the bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to sound like a Max fanboy, but he's arguably the best driver on the grid right now.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe what you're saying is if he does fall down to fourth place, that's his one chance to get out.
Yep.
If he really wants to get out.
Yep.
So maybe it could happen in the mid-season, just because
possibly
it doesn't give them enough time to turn it around for him. I mean, we know when Max hits the track, he's not going to start pulling back just to get himself out of a contract. He's not made that way.
He's not going to phone it in so he can get out. I don't sense that would be.
I don't see it.
Something
I don't
he
see
would
it.
do. I mean,
No,
when asked about it, he said, "quote I just go race by race. I think it'd be better than Bahrain." Talking, heading into Jeddah, the rest is out of my control, is what he said about it. And of course he would. He's not going to comment on that. That's speculation. And I guess ultimately, to be clear, the Red Bull is the clear loser if Max left. But the bigger question ultimately then becomes, where would he go? And while I don't think McLaren, as you said, would really seem to be an option, would Mercedes dump George, who is also at the end of his contract in 2025?
I would say that'd be the most likely, right?
I would.
It's an easy out, and there's always been a connection there anyway. Sort of, they've been chasing it.
Yep.
If George is out of contract, George is doing a great job, but he's not Max Verstappen. He's not a four-time world champion. So if you have a chance to do it, that would be, to me, the most likely chance.
Well, the other suggestion really keeps coming back to Aston Martin, right? And would that be a legit target with Max and Adrian being there and Honda moving over in 2026? So three of the critical pieces of the puzzle that Red Bull used to great success, Honda, Adrian, and Max, could get the band back together over there. And I know Lawrence would find the money. But is Max willing to take that gamble, and is he betting on the come? And if he's willing to do that, Aston, why wouldn't you just stay at Red Bull and do it? Because
it's got to be quite a sales pitch from Aston to do that.
Yeah,
I mean that's Max's gamble, not obviously Aston Martin's gamble.
No,
anyone Mercedes on down, they'd kick their drivers out in a heartbeat if Max Verstappen was willing to go.
Yeah,
obviously a lot of speculation over what Aston Martin are doing right now, and what Adrian Newey can come up with for the new regulations.
Right.
And it's a lot. It's a lot of risk, I would think, from Max's side, unless he's looking into, he knows a lot more than we do.
Maybe
what they're creating in there. But with the new regulation changes, still, no matter what you see on paper, till you see the cars run on the ground, still a chance that someone gets something really wrong, like the Mercedes size 0 car.
Yep.
Right? They got it wrong.
They got it wrong.
They were a dominating team, and they got it wrong.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And also, it's not just Adrian in the chassis. It's a new engine.
Yeah.
And Honda, while they've been doing great at Red Bull, it's not a foregone conclusion they'll hit the ground running with a dominant engine in 2026. So you've got that factor too. That's out of Adrian's hands, right?
Correct.
So it's a difficult situation. Now, Mercedes says they're content with their current driver lineup. Toto Wolff stated that he's satisfied with his drivers, George Russell, Kimi Antonelli, dismissed talks about pursuing Max, which he's done before. He emphasized that the team's focus is really on nurturing their current driver lineup and preparing for the upcoming regulation changes in 2026. He said, quote, "We're super happy with the lineup we have. George is performing at the same level as Max," end quote. I'll let you argue about that one. Because I've defended George.
He's going to say that, but I don't think anyone's operating at that level. I think Oscar's the closest, but I mean, and George is doing a great job.
He is doing a great job.
He's in the hunt. He's in the shout. But
he is. He's thereabouts. And
he's not the full-time world champion. I'm sorry.
And so, this would, on the surface, suggest that Mercedes is confident with their current driver lineup, and they're happy with the direction of the strategic direction, and potentially impacting. The driver market, they would not have a home at the end for Max there, if that's the case, if you take that on the surface.
And I do not.
That's right.
Here's my pinch of salt.
Yes, exactly. I do not. George, his contract's up in 2025. He's done a great job this season. I've often suggested that he doesn't get much love from the team, not like Lewis did or Kimi does now. And that to me is, people have sent me messages and said I'm just beating this dead horse on this thing, that Toto did give him a little love. Yeah, he does, but nowhere near what they do with Kimi. And that's tangible to me from the outside looking in, right?
Yeah, right.
So I see that with George. I don't know I can't make things up about what it is. Does Max make sense at Mercedes? I think, despite his comments, Toto would like to have arguably the most talented driver on the grid. But, Paul, will he pay for it? He wasn't willing to pay for Lewis, which I agreed with him on. Would he pay for Max?
I think he would.
Yeah. 40 million?
I think Lewis was a different category.
Well, he's closer to his sell-by date, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
He's not coming off winning 4 world titles.
Right.
He hasn't won a world title in 5 years, right?
Right.
Obviously. And, he's in the end. And it made more sense for Ferrari because they can make a lot more use of his personality.
His brand, yeah.
Future going forward, I think. It's a bit, there's no reason to replace Sainz competitive-wise, I don't think.
No.
It was a lot bigger story than that. I think Mercedes would jump at and they'd find the money.
Yeah, Toto probably would.
The money.
They'll find the money.
Yeah.
And so would Aston Martin if they could get him.
Yep.
Hey, speaking of McLaren, I won't dwell on this. This is an FYI for F1 fans. McLaren is going to withdraw from their Formula E series after the 24-25 season. So they announced its exit from Formula E to focus on Formula One, IndyCar, and the new hypercar project, the World Endurance Championship. The shift in McLaren's ambition to achieve what they're switching this is to achieve the Triple Crown, which is what Zach has always been after. Wants to do that. McLaren Formula E, this doesn't do wonders for Formula E in general or electric racing in general. And which brings up the question, Paul, how's that hypercar battle? Is that going to leave you and the Valkyries as the newcomers to hypercar battling it out?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to look that way, right, with the Genesis as well. I mean, we'll be the sophomores.
Yes.
As the Americans
to the freshmen.
say. So hopefully we'll be a bit further ahead than they are, but they're a big group, right? They're not going to go at it, sheepishly.
No.
But as we've found out, go into the hypermarket, people don't open their arms and
right.
show you all their wares.
Right.
So it's a bit of a, it's a slow, steady climb to being competitive, and they're going to have to go through the same thing. I think this says more about Formula E than it does anything else. I mean, if they win the championship, they don't win the championship. What does that mean to McLaren as a brand?
Right.
I don't think it means anything.
No.
And I don't think it's a big distraction. I don't even think it's a big financial distraction, but I think they're just not getting out of it what they would in all the other series combined. So why even deal with that? The series hasn't really become what everyone was playing it to be.
Yep. And
it's a minor series in my mind.
Yep.
And why would they play there when they've got much bigger races to win, like Le Mans and Indy 500 and the F1 World Championship?
Yeah, a lot of the money that you put into certain programs like this is coming out, a significant portion coming out of marketing budgets. Yeah. And if you didn't feel like your brand impact, they're going to do brand impact studies and they're going to have the data and metrics to take a look at that. And they've done their customer personas or their ICP work, and they're going to look at how does that message resonate with the customers, both Formula E fans who are fans of Formula E. How does that resonate with them? And people who aren't fans of Formula E, what's the frequency, the exposure they've had to McLaren's presence in Formula E? They're going to do all this market research. And if it doesn't, if the numbers aren't there, the investment doesn't make a lot of sense at that point.
Right. I mean, I haven't been to a Formula E race, but from watching on TV, it looks like a minor event.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yes. Let's see. This is so the cooling vest that the F1 drivers wear at the real warm Grand Prix. Lewis was advocating for traditional heat acclimation over the cooling vests. He had the extreme heat of Saudi Arabia. Lewis suggested that the pre-race conditioning instead of using in-cockpit cooling vests. He talks about pre-race prep, hydration, body pre-cooling, in ice baths, lower the core, those kind of things. And he would know far better than I do, but I guess my thought on that is that none of these drivers are in dodgy shape. They're all really good shape,
No, right.
And I don't know, I see him doing a lot of ice baths, and I see him doing a lot of those things, but trying to keep the driver cool in those outrageous conditions. Anytime you're converting energy, you're creating heat. So and the F1 cars convert a lot of energy. So,
yeah.
And so do your cars, Paul. So
right.
They get hot.
Yeah.
And I understand his point. But then I was thinking about this in context to your cars. I was just kind of juxtaposing the two, thinking about the Valkyrie, it's enclosed, the GTs are enclosed. And as you pointed out, you have AC in those cars.
Yeah.
Which is
crazy.
Nice. But I have to think that sometimes, maybe the driver doesn't feel like the fan's up fast enough. It's not blowing enough cold air. Or take some teams. I'm sure there's been some teams out where the AC unit wasn't working right or didn't or whatever it was.
Absolutely.
That heat that generates in there has got to be like sitting on the surface of the sun, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in the sports car world, I personally have never really raced cars with AC in them, and so it's weird. But now all the cars are designed that way, and they're basically sealed. Inside. So it's worse when the systems fail. It's worse than it was ever before, because there is literally no flowing air coming through there unless it's coming through the AC. There's a fan too, and the AC, so you can get some nice hot air blowing on you sometimes. So it is a factor in the prep and maintenance of the race cars to make sure those units are going, because if it goes out, that driver has a very short shelf life of being able to perform out there, and you've got to account for that.
Yeah.
So as weird as it seems to be all the time that the race cars have AC, it is real, and it's now, and it's, I'm an old curmudgeon, much like Lewis Hamilton, who's
right.
Had to deal with it his whole life, right? And then all these spoiled brats. I think probably Lewis thinks he's fit enough, and he doesn't have that would give him actually an advantage.
Probably would.
It probably would, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Lewis, I would say, he's super fit, and I think he could see that as a leverage over some of the other drivers. I know they're all really fit, but every person takes the heat differently.
That's
no matter
true.
how fit and prepared you are. I'm sure all the teams have their physios, they have their ice baths, they've got their preparation. Pretty much across the board. I'm sure everyone knows what you can do to prepare your driver, but physiology of a person can vary, and there's no way of reversing that or changing that. But even in a Valkyrie or a GT car, for sure, there's a lot more room than in a Formula One car.
Yeah, right.
And you add these systems, and as I said, it's problematic to keep them working even in our cars. So how to make that work and make sure it's consistent in a Formula One car would be difficult, I feel.
It would. I was thinking, because you're gonna, as soon as you say, okay, we're gonna put an AC, a generator on it, and we're gonna blow cool air into the suit, not on it, but maybe there's inlets where you just stuff and you're blowing cool air or whatever it is. The teams are going to hate it because that's just going to make the car heavier. And where it's located, adjust the center of gravity and the weight, where you position that weight in the car.
Right, weight distribution. Yeah, I mean, for the most part, those cool suits are not necessarily air blowing, but there's liquid.
Yeah.
They're like vests with just a complex map going through them. But they're usually plugged into a unit that has either ice or but usually just can you imagine putting an ice chest in a Formula One car and it just kind of flows through there. And it's obviously only good for a certain amount of time. But all these things are dangerous in a Formula One car because something comes loose, something doesn't work, the pipe comes off. Kimi had enough trouble with his drink tube, let alone his cool suit tube.
Charles he said there was sitting in water, right? A few races ago.
Right. Exactly.
So interesting to see what the FIA or what they come up with to combat that. But that's interesting. All right. The one thing I want to talk about is I was reading that there were some concerns over Mercedes' potential dominance in the 2026 engine regulation, or at least I was seeing people talking about that on the socials. And about other teams, and they're all jockeying for position around these regulation changes. And the closer we're getting now, the more sort of concerns are being raised. With Mercedes, they had that 8-year domination. They came out in 2014, and everybody got all mad at me when I was talking about it for 2 or 3 years about Mercedes, the baked-in advantage they had, and everybody, it's the same for all the teams, and blah, blah, blah. Well, not, because you couldn't touch your engine. You couldn't improve it, Yeah. It wasn't the same. It was a baked-in advantage that was locked into the regulations, and they had an engine freeze, and, they had this advantage, and that's just the reality of it. And kudos to them. I wasn't mad at them, but it is what it is, right? So nobody really wants, every team wants that to be them in 2026, but no team wants another team to have that advantage, right?
Correct.
And so this brings up a lot of concern, and there's been some emergency talks over the engines in the 2026 regulations. The power unit was supposed to be shifted to a 50-50 split between internal combustion, or the ICE, and the MGUK. The electric power. They're removing the MGUH, and then they're talking about these major aero changes, right? Some downforce reduction, those kind of things, more movable parts. They're talking about, that's all we need, is
more DRS
more
flaps.
DRS flaps. Isn't that exciting? The 100% sustainable fuel they're talking about. But there's all of the politics that are involved in this, Paul. You've got, Red Bull and Audi. There's some suggestion that they're favoring the 2026 engine rules, and because they're starting fresh, in their new engine development. Established teams, Mercedes, Ferrari, Renault, maybe they're a little concerned about losing the competitive advantage they have, being that the changes are so significant. Maybe they were favoring more of an evolution of what they currently have instead of a wholesale redo. Anytime you do a redo like that, it's super expensive to do. Then you've got the FIA. They're, pushing all the sustainability efforts. You got teams lobbying, the FIA and everyone else trying to change or tweak the regulations, et cetera. Then you got all the performance concerns. The electric power imbalance could be, according to the team, just a very dull drag race down the front straight, not at very high speed, because you run out of electric power on those long straights and you're out of power, There's issues that's around this. The cost, the competitive imbalance, potentially. What do they do about it? I guess my first thing is, Paul, isn't it a little late to be having these conversations?
Well, yes. Very frustrating to start hearing these conversations now, because when they were first drawn up, it was very apparent, at least to me and you, I think we were discussing. It was like, who came up with this idea and why did they come up with it? And this is just all the iterations we heard. Oh, well, the cars are going to run out of power. It's like, oh, great. That's exactly what we want from a Formula One car, for it to, power dissipate away before it gets to the end of a lap or end of a straightaway. It's like, oh, it's a great idea. Super. I've hated these rules since the very beginning. I think it's disastrous. Teams are very impressive in the fact that even when some of these rules have been just put together by, a 5-year-old child in the back of the FIA office, they've found ways of making them work and work around them. Always impressed by that. But is it a step too far? I feel like it is. I mean, if you're literally having to change the aerodynamic and having to make movable wings so the cars don't slow down to a dull pace, there's something wrong. This isn't Formula One.
Yeah, I agree. I felt
and they've been backtracking the whole time.
They have.
It's like, oh well, let's throw in V10s instead. Why did we do that? Well, everyone wanted that, but you guys said no.
Right.
You wanted more electric.
Well, there's all the concerns too on that point, Paul. Is you had MBS coming out and saying, I've kind of felt like with all of this ramping up and becoming a serious talking point between the teams and the FIA, I felt like he said, well, okay, why don't we just bag it all and just bring back V8s and run 100% sustainable fuel? We're done. You know, we're sustainable.
Fantastic.
And
too late.
Yeah. And everybody's like, well, no, you just lured Audi in and Cadillac and everybody with this new hybrid technology, and we can't just go back to a simple V8. And in my mind, I'm thinking, why can't you? Cadillac makes a very nice V8. You know, so does Audi, as it turns out.
Yeah, I mean, they all could, but the amount of effort and money that's been put forth to this that'd be a real slap in the face to everyone.
It would be.
I think the deal with the new manufacturers coming in, I think the allure of the series more than the regulations at this point and the notoriety that Formula One is bringing to the table at this moment, right? But you know, it was a clean sheet of paper, so. If you're a new engine manufacturer coming in, you've got a lot more chance at being more equal to a Mercedes or Ferrari than you did if it was just a minor change and they've got, you know, a decade of how these engines have evolved.
Right.
Personally, I think it's still hard for the Audis and to come in because you don't have that infrastructure or that history of how these programs evolve. Yes, you've probably been sitting there doing this engine on and haven't been distracted by trying to run an engine program on the other side. But just being involved in the Aston Martin Valkyrie program, new engine, new everything, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of problems to solve. And if you're new to the series and you don't have that infrastructure or those people with that history and that knowledge, it's tough. I'm not saying they can't get there, and they could come out with an engine that's just dominating everyone, but I can't see that really happening. But all the teams, they want that advantage, as you said. They want to be the Mercedes. They want that locked-in advantage. But then on the other side, they're like, but what if we don't have that engine? There's got to be an avenue for us to be able to keep working on this engine to get it out to that level. But then what do you say? If Mercedes come out with a strong engine, you say, okay, well, you can't do anything.
But everybody
can. Let everyone else can. I don't know how you develop regulations around
And you're kind of giving the middles to the whole cost cap thing at that point.
Right.
You know,
right.
This whole cost reduction to participate in F1, it's making more money than it ever has. So do we need to have the cost reduction, or, you know, is it working to, you know, make all teams competitive any given Sunday? No, not necessarily. It just allows the smaller teams to remain solvent and participate. But, you know, the other thing about it is you've got this, the FIA is going to have to do something with the whole electric and the powertrain balance, right? They're going to have to you can't run out of battery power and coast into turn one. That ain't going to work. They're going to have to make adjustments to that. You know, and then, you know, people are saying, well, I think, you know, the 2026 regulations are really just a stepping stone to go fully electric in the 2030s. No. Let's just pump the brakes. I never thought I would say that I agree with MBS, but in my mind, if they really, really want to contain cost, go back to a V8 or V10 using 100% sustainable fuel and call it a day.
Yeah.
Now, you may lose Cadillac, or you may lose Mercedes, or you may lose Audi or whatever. It's not the first time the series has lost manufacturers, you know, because you could easily go out as a privateer. You could bring a privateer in who could afford a Cosworth V8, you know, engine package, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of hybrids for the purpose of adding more power.
Yeah, right.
Right? For the purpose of not wasting energy and putting that energy to make the car go faster, not just to make it go.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I'd rather, to that point, I'd rather have a push-to-pass electric hybrid boost down the front straight than DRS, you know?
Exactly. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's see. Oh, a couple track things to talk about. The upcoming Madrid F1 circuit released some video of what the circuit will look like. Carlos said, you know, he thinks it'll be a great circuit, a great event, one of the best on the calendar. He was pretty excited about it. Yeah, I don't know. I watched it. There were some interesting lines to it. There was some interesting parts to it. But that's a rendering. We'll see what it looks like. I was pleasantly surprised.
I haven't seen that myself. So.
Yeah, I was I was saying I wasn't a big fan of watching those renderings of the Las Vegas track, but it actually turns out to be a decent passing or decent.
I mean, it did turn out to be a good track, and I think we kind of picked that out when we saw the layout.
Yeah,
a little bit.
We did.
But yeah.
And the other thing, Mexico Grand Prix. This is cool. An agreement was reached. Apparently, they're going to sign it or have signed it at the time of this recording, but to keep it on the calendar until 2028. It made its return in 2015. It was off the calendar for 20 years, and it came back in 2015. Is that right?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Probably.
Yeah, and it's 10 years already. Wow.
Yeah, that sounds about,
Is that about right?
I mean, obviously Sergio generated. It's gonna be interesting to see.
Yes.
What happens now that Sergio's not going to be showing up, because there's obviously a lot of fanatics. About Sergio, but I know a lot of people from Mexico, and they're racing fans. They're racing people down there too, and I think Sergio's not there, but I think they'll still support the race.
Well, that's what this tells me. If the promoters are willing to pony up the kind of money you have to pony up,
right,
to hold a race till 2028, it tells me that they're looking beyond Sergio Perez. They're looking to the race culture and race fanatics and fans in Mexico, which I think is fantastic.
Yep.
That's great.
Hopefully they do support it.
Yeah.
Said that the Mexico has a strong racing history and of participation and fandom.
Yeah.
So.
I was a big fan of the Rodriguez brothers.
Yeah. Right.
They were fantastic. Tragically, both lost their lives, but they were fantastic. I love the old videos from the 60s of them. They dressed to the nines. They were great. They were great. Let's see. You remember a couple of races ago we had all the fires, trackside fires?
Yeah, that was quite something.
Wasn't that fun? And that was all down to the titanium skid blocks that they put on the bottom of the cars to create more sparks to, quote, spice up the show. And then it ends up causing all that. Well, apparently they're talking about now switching those to steel components to reduce the amount of sparks. The FIA is talking about changing that. This change, we know the material. So I was thinking about that. This is F1, Paul. And that titanium skid blocks on the bottom of a car. You think, okay, so we're going to replace those with steel ones. Okay, fine, put steel ones in. An F1 team is going to engineer the crap out of that issue, right?
Absolutely.
It's a different compound. It has a different wear rate. We can, the car height could be adjusted. They're going to beaver the details out of that thing until someone's blue in the face and come up with the best design for the steel composite versus the titanium ones they're using. So a simple switch like that will probably cost tons of money, I'm sure.
Like every single little thing on a Formula One car, it's analyzed to the nth degree, right?
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I don't know if they have a set one that the FIA distributes, or all the teams can come up with their own.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, so it's hard to say, but for sure they'll look for a little angle there somewhere.
Yeah.
Try and eliminate whatever, but it's pretty funny. They brought in the titanium to make the sparks and make it like the old days with Senna and Prost down the straight, and then all of a sudden one race. There's fires on the side, and it's all let's get rid of everything. I think it's a little reactionary. We haven't had fires in how many years since they come up with that thing? I think it was a bit overreaction.
I do too.
Honestly.
Leave it to MBS.
Yeah.
Speaking of cars, Paul, what's on the bottom of your to protect your floors?
Yeah, so we've got the same kind of thing as Formula One does. So we've got the jab rock, basically, is the wear plank, right?
Like F1's legality plank.
Yep. So you got to do that, and then obviously you've got a couple of little skid plate things that.
Are those made out of titanium?
I'm not telling you. But yeah, so you've got a couple of things to protect the floor as well.
Do you have
regulations? Always keep an eye on it.
Do you have regulations like Formula One? You can't grind away X amount.
Oh, absolutely. Ask Roger Penske.
Yeah, right.
He got
That's
kicked
right.
out for it. Yeah, so you need to protect the plank.
About that.
But you can't. Yeah, but obviously, like F1 cars, the lower you go, the more downforce you get. So.
Yeah.
Have you seen the big diffuser on the Valkyrie?
Yes.
Super sexy.
It is very sexy. Yeah, if you guys haven't looked at the back of the Valkyrie at the race, look at that. The back, the big diffuser is just awesome. It looks incredible.
Yeah, but you got to keep your eye on those things because like Daytona and things like that, you can wear those things out.
I would think Sebring would be a nightmare.
Yeah, right.
All the bumps.
Yeah.
So you're really watching that pretty closely.
Very closely.
Yeah. Because apparently IMSA measures that crap. Oh, that's funny. Excellent. All right, let's do some mailbag, shall we, before we bail out?
You've got mail.
We can do that. So this goes back to Max. We're talking about the last race in what we'll call the incident, which caused all the
controversy.
Yes. In the corner with Oscar Piastri and Max Verstappen. And Shumi in Toronto asked this, Paul. He says, hey, NC. And Paul, this is really for you, Paul. Because I know Shumi knows, you would know. Don't you think Max cut the corner and stayed in the lead rather than giving the place up to Piastri because Red Bull and Max thought that running out front in clean air would give them at least 5 seconds needed to negate the penalty? They figured he had a better chance of winning out front, even with the penalty, than giving the place back and running in dirty air. That's how I saw it. Didn't that occur to you too?
Of course it did. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before about, when we're talking about gaining advantages, it's not just about passing somebody. It's about gapping them, or in this case, getting you a track position. Track position is key. And protecting that. So, I mean, in the spare of the moment, obviously, Max was hoping to come out of there in first place anyway, right? But if you don't, then yes, you can control the race from the front, and the penalty is negated pretty easy with the clean air. Unfortunately, the Red Bull any other day would have probably just driven away, right? But
yeah, and I don't know. To be honest with you, my thought on that. Is that I think typically gaining that unfair advantage would be a 10-second penalty. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the team didn't know that was going to be a 5-second penalty. It could have been a 10-second. No. They could have radioed and told them to cede the position. There could have been a couple different outcomes. So I don't think that they kept him in front because they knew they were only going to get a 5-second penalty. They knew that the best chance of covering the 5 seconds was keeping him out front. It would have been more, I think, of their thinking that it could be a 10-second penalty, and I don't know if they felt like they could cover 10 seconds.
Yeah, I think,
I don't know.
In their view, if they gave up the place, their race was done, so it was better to take the risk than it was to just give up the place.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of times it's better to take the time penalty than give up the position. We've seen that.
We've seen it from Max. Yeah.
From Max and all the way down the field.
Yep, we've seen it all the way down the grid.
We've seen a lot of people negate any kind of penalty because they didn't exceed the position.
Right. They just drove through the penalty,
Right.
Yeah, they gapped enough.
So the penalties need to be different for those kind of situations.
I was watching your race.
Yeah.
I don't remember which car it was. It was on Sunday's race 2.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was thinking, you talk about you want to complain about 5 seconds or 10-second penalties. I don't remember which car it was, but got a 4-minute and 8-second penalty.
Yeah.
How's that for a penalty? I think in essence, what I gained from that is that they got a free lap they shouldn't have gotten.
Exactly. The rules on the pass around, and they took the pass around when they shouldn't. So they gained all that time back and then some when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to know your stuff. Sometimes it's about dotting your I's and crossing your T's. Sometimes not necessarily about going through the corner as fast as you can. So very important stuff.
So when you're an F1 fan and you're complaining about 10-second penalty or stop and go or whatever, think about having a 4-minute and 8-second penalty. That
Yeah, I
sucks.
can't tell you how long I spent studying the pass around rules and wave bys and everything and going over those with the engineers and making sure whatever happens, we know what's going on
Yeah.
and know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. Well, that does it for this podcast. Hey, Paul.
Okay. Hey, what's the next race?
The next race is Miami.
Miami.
Yes. Yes,
Right.
Miami next week. Is it next weekend, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
The Miami Grand Prix. All I got to say
So
is
you came up with a T-shirt, didn't you?
I did come up with a T-shirt. So,
Yeah, I saw that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It didn't say Miami Gardens on it, though. That
No,
might be
I thought
even
about
funnier, but...
Yeah, I thought about going Miami Gardens, but nobody would know what that meant. Except us and people who listen to the podcast. But yeah, no, I created a couple. I just having fun. I thought, it'd be fun just to, if you support the podcast and you're going to one of the races, I thought I had to do some those cheap tourist T-shirts that you get, like if you went to Miami or Las Vegas on the Strip and they're just out on the sidewalk on racks and you pick them up for $4 or whatever, and they're always like T-shirts where it's not using anything that was like trademarked or copyrighted, but they're hints at something, So I thought it would be fun.
Those in the know would get it.
Those in the know would get it, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So like the Miami one, I have a pink flamingo, and it just says Miami, and it has the Part for May, obviously, podcast on it, and on the back of it, it's got our logo. So I made that, and then I thought, oh well, I want to do one with Las Vegas, so I made one with dice on it that says Las Vegas, right?
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh, I can't leave Spa out. That's my favorite track. So I did one with a Belgian beer glass with the Belgian flag colors, and it just says Belgium. And so anyway, if you guys want to support the channel and you're going to a race and you want to show your support, you can pick those up at our shop. I did 3 of them. I'm going to do some more. I'm just waiting for inspiration to come on what sort of graphic I use to hint at the thing. So I'll have to come up with something like that.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Very fun. I just saw that one.
It was kind of fun. Mm-hmm. Fun to do. So anyway, thanks for sitting in for Grace.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But we'll be back.
I should have come in blazoned in McLaren stuff, but obviously I'm not going to do that.
I know. Well, tell people the funny thing,
glasses.
the funny incident you had with McLaren over the weekend.
Which one?
Where he boxed in your box.
Oh, yeah, I sent you that, yeah. Oh, my God, that was hilarious. So in one of the pit stops, there's a McLaren 2 doors down from us, actually, and we were coming into box with the Hannahs, and then this guy got lost, and he ended up halfway in our box, and then Nick, who's one of the managers, but he's also working a lollipop, started whacking the roof on the McLaren, telling him to get the F out of here, and because as the Hannahs were like, they're coming in the pit. What? Who's in our box? And got him out of there. But there was a lot of swearing and stuff going on. It was pretty hilarious.
That's hilarious. I loved it.
I wish I could play it for everybody. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's a lot of rude language just going on.
Those pesky McLarens always getting in the way.
Always getting in the way.
Good fun. We'll be back to talk about the Miami Grand Prix, though.
Yeah,
that's going to be fun.
Lots of fun.
Lando's got to come back, Paul.
Yeah, I mean that was his first win, right? That place, so it's good. It's good. Yeah. If he's definitely going to win, he's got to at least qualify well and give him a chance to win. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, if you like the podcast, go to your favorite player, give us some love, give us a good review. We'd appreciate it. A huge thank you to our Patreon supporters, because we could not and would not do this podcast without you. You can share your opinions about any of these stories or anything else you want to by going to theparkformay.com. And you can even be like Shumi in Toronto and send us something in mailbag. At our website, at the top, you'll see the little menu, and over to the far right, it says mailbag. And if you click on that, you can go in there and leave a question for us in there. And I check those before every podcast, and we'll snag some of those and answer your questions if you'd like to answer, if you'd like to get an answer to your question. And until next week, when we come back to do it all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camera, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.